Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this special Mother's Day Facebook Live. We're so excited to have Marci and Meredith here. I have to tell you a really funny story. When I was getting all the information around for this live, I reached out to Meredith and I said, Meredith, are you 23? Because in my world, I was 23 when I graduated from college. I went the 4 years in high school and the 4 years in college. And she says, no, I was homeschooled. I'm 21. So I wanted to just bring that to light because I feel like it's a real true testament that you're not bogged down by ages, you're not bogged down by years. And so, yeah, she's 21 and Marci is her mother. You might know Marci. You might have talked to Marci. Marci is one of our Sonlight advisors. She homeschooled both of her girls K through 12, but I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her history in homeschooling and a little bit more about her family here in a moment. I just wanted to welcome you all. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if there's any questions you want me to ask these guys. This is it's a really cool perspective to have Meredith and Marci join us. So you can get advice from, a student that has went through Sonlight, and you can get advice from the mother who put her there. So let us know where you're watching from and if you have any questions. So Marci, let's start with you. Tell me a little bit about your homeschool, history and your family.
Okay. So I homeschooled Meredith and her younger sister, K through 12 with Sonlight. I always did 2 levels. So those of you mamas trying to do 2 levels and wondering how to get it done, it can be done. So her sister graduated last spring and Meredith graduated in 2015, Meredith? Yes, from high school, and she graduated from college in 3 years, and Caroline's on track to do the same thing.
Very good. Meredith, what have you been up to after graduation from high school and college?
Yeah, so I graduated from high school and went right into college to get my business marketing degree. I wrapped that up in 3 years. After I graduated college, I spent a couple months overseas in Romania doing some missions work and working, and then came back. Now I'm in Springfield, Missouri, and I'm working for O'Reilly Auto Parts. I'm a digital marketing coordinator.
Very similar. We have very similar careers.
Yes, very similar marketing careers.
Yes. So this question is for both of you. What was your favorite thing about homeschooling and being homeschooled? Marci, why don't you start?
Okay. My favorite thing about homeschooling, especially as I look back as kind of a mom on the other side, was the time that we spent together and the conversations that we had. And we have just so many funny school-related memories. Like when Caroline, Meredith's sister, was little, I would read aloud to them and I would do all the voices. So one time when I was saying something to her, she said, Mom, you sound just like Wilbur, because Wilbur was the character that I was doing in Charlotte's Web, and she thought that was Wilbur's voice. So we just have all these great memories. And I think even when we were making the memories, I knew that that was going to be special and important. And it is, looking back.
Very good. Meredith? Favorite thing?
Sorry, good.
No, favorite thing about being homeschooled?
Yeah, I think I just love the way I was able to learn. And it was very flexible and very personalized. And I was learning through reading and experiencing and discussion instead of learning through worksheets or sitting in a classroom. So it was a very interactive thing. We had lots of good conversations, like Mom said, about what we were reading and about what we were learning. I feel like I got to learn things from a lot of different perspectives and learn how to reason and develop my own opinions. And so I think for me, it was just a great way to learn. It was very customizable, very, a lot of room for my imagination to kind of lead me where I wanted to learn. And I think it set me up very well to love learning and continue being someone who enjoys learning.
Very good. So let's talk about the age-old question. We all know that our kids are socialized just fine, but Meredith, do you feel like you missed out on socialization being homeschooled?
I don't feel that way at all, which is the question I always get when people figure out I'm homeschooled. They assume that I missed out on things. I think when you're intentional about connecting with other people, that there's a lot of great ways. I think in some ways I was socialized more broadly than a lot of my peers in public school. I was involved in church groups. I might be involved in sports or music lessons, and I was interacting with lots of different groups of kids in different ages from, in different settings and different situations. I had a busy social schedule. It just looked a little different. So I feel like I came out of homeschooling very comfortable socializing with other kids, and also with a kind of unique ability to socialize really well with adults and people older than me too, because I spent time interacting with people of lots of different ages. No gaps for me there.
And I put a lot of miles on my car. Just saying.
You were in the car a lot.
Yeah.
Very good. Marci, a question we always get here at Sonlight, and I'm sure as an advisor you hear it too. What was your experience with the college admission process? Like, do you have any advice for any moms who might be looking down the road at that, and how they can better position their life and their children and their homeschool to make that a little bit easier?
I really found that it wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. It seems like, oh, wow, this is when it gets real, right? Because we've been doing our own thing all these years, and now somebody's going to look at it, and did I do it right? I found that it was a lot easier than I thought. Our website has an ebook on creating transcripts, and back when I did it, there was a video on the website. So I wasn't an advisor yet, but I took my advice from the Sonlight advisors, and I created a transcript, and really found that the test scores are the first thing. So putting energy into preparing for the ACT and SAT was really important. But beyond that, creating your transcript, showing a good progression. And colleges were super friendly to homeschoolers. I know a lot of people worry about accreditation and how that affects their admission to college. We just found that to be a non-issue. We were never even questioned about whether the homeschool program that we used was accredited, because the test scores were good and then the transcript backed it up. And so nobody really ever asked us a question. I can tell you that Meredith was recruited by Ivy League universities, and they were aware that she was homeschooled, and a lot of them seek out homeschoolers because they know homeschoolers are good students, and homeschoolers know how to learn independently, which is a really important skill for college. So we just found the whole process was super easy. So I hope that helps you guys, because it's really not as scary as you think it's going to be.
Very good. Tell me a little bit about how you think Sonlight helped prepare your children and yourself for college.
How it prepared me for college?
Yeah, you're having to send them off into the world.
I don't think it prepared me for college. It was really hard because I was used to having them home all the time. I really see that my kids are independent thinkers. And I think that's one of the most important things that we got as a family from Sonlight. And I know that when they went to college, we heard that as the number one piece of feedback from admissions people and from professors in classes. A lot of times, I don't know, Meredith can tell you this, a lot of times professors would identify them as homeschoolers and be like, well, I can tell you were homeschooled because of the way that you are able to think independently, and called on them in class because they knew they'd have an opinion, maybe where other kids may not have an opinion. So I think that's the number one thing, just teaching them how to learn independently and think for themselves.
Very good. Meredith, what about you? How do you feel like Sonlight better prepared you for life and time at your university?
I'd say the same thing, the self-starter type of mentality. The way I learned was more, dealt with a lot of bigger picture concepts and learning how to think and how to process, as opposed to just memorizing a lot of facts. So when you get to college, that's a much more valuable skill to have. The professors aren't necessarily holding your hand and leading you through the steps like they might be in elementary school or high school. Instead, it's a lot more providing you with a book or a material and then, you know, giving you the lectures. And from there, it's kind of up to you how you're going to internalize that information, how you're going to process it, how you're going to learn it in order to be able to show you have a good understanding of it in a test. So it just was a good fit for me. And I think the other friends I had at college who were also homeschooled found it to be a very natural and easy transition. I think some of my friends who went to public high schools had a bit of a bumpier transition than they were expecting, because they weren't maybe as guided through the steps of what they needed to complete, you know, and there's a little bit of an adjustment there. But it fit very well with how I was already learning, which was taking information from books, taking the time to process and figure out how that fit in, match it up with other things I was learning, kind of get the big picture. And then that transitioned very well into testing well and doing assignments well. It was a natural transition for me.
That's good to hear. So speaking of books, let's talk about your top 3 favorite Sonlight books.
Well, you know there's no answer to that question. Meredith,
yeah, we were having a hard time with this one because there's just too many of them. But we have a lot of favorites. We talk about them all the time. They're like the books that built my childhood. It's like telling a family story, talking about a Sonlight book, because we remember them and we have experiences around them. And so it's really
Follow My Leader is one of your favorites.
Yes, we like the book about the blind guy and the guide dog when we were kids. But lots of historical books. That's how I learned history, is in a lot of ways, is through books like Johnny Tremaine and what are some of the other like historical fiction books?
The Sherwood Ring, that's a favorite.
Mysteries and adventures that also helped us learn a lot. But it was good family time at the end of the day. We'd sit in our bedroom and Mom would read out loud, and it was really important to us.
So I think one of my all-time favorites was Sarah Plain and Tall. That was one of my favorites. I have the whole series now in my bookcase. The girls love The Sherwood Ring and Charlotte's Web. I already told you a story about that. That's just an all-time. I don't know if we could even beat that. That might be the top one, Charlotte's Web. What other ones can you Moccasin Trail. A lot of these aren't in. Some of these have gone out of print. I don't think Follow My Leader's around anymore, but that was an all-time favorite in Moccasin Trail.
Do you like Lois Lowry books?
Yeah.
Too many.
Too many to pick. When we were talking about this earlier, the two of them were going back. Marci was pulling books off of her bookshelf back there. Yeah. Remember this one? Remember this one? So, yeah, I think it's really hard to pick for sure.
Yeah.
So, viewers, tell us what your favorite book is. What are you reading right now? Tell us in the comments. Okay, let's get back to the questions. Marci, did you ever question the homeschool path? If so, how did you overcome the feelings? And is there anything you do differently?
I don't know that I would do anything differently. I think we all question it at different times. Early on, you feel like you're not sure. Am I doing enough? Am I doing the right things? One of the things that helped me, honestly, was our state requires standardized testing. And so we didn't have to do that till 3rd grade. But once they took that test, and I kind of viewed it as like a report card, right, for me, not really for them. But once I took that test and saw that they were okay and that they were doing well, then I kind of released myself from the pressure of feeling, that uncertainty. And that really helped going forward. And, there were always things that I found on that test that I saw that maybe I could do better, but at least I could tell where they were at compared to their peers. And I think that's one of the things, when you're homeschooling, you don't necessarily know. And there were times when they wanted to go to school. Meredith wanted to go to school when she was in 5th grade. She just thought that public school was the way to go. So we arranged for her to go and shadow a friend in public school for the day. And she came home and she was like, do you know how much time we just sat there? You know, I could have been done school so much faster. And so that kind of put that to bed. But, you know, there are definitely times, you know, not every day is sunshine and rainbows. You have hard days and you have times when you hit the wall with math or whatever it is. And I think it helped me just to, when that happened, just to step back and regroup and not try to necessarily fight it, but to step back and consider what we could do differently and just try to be flexible.
Very good. Let's see. Meredith, what was your favorite thing about being homeschooled?
I think I mentioned already just like the way I was able to learn. It's also very flexible, which is great. There are many times that we took school on the road with us. I had a lot of time to be a kid because with being able to focus my learning on me and my pace and, you know, getting things done how kind of in the way that I needed to do them or that was best for me. When I was done with my schoolwork, I was done and I got a lot more time in the afternoons to just go outside and play. Or, you know, I was a very imaginative kiddo, always like writing or creating or doing something. A lot of that learning happened in a self-directed way because I had time to kind of explore and be a kid. So looking back, I think that's probably one of the best things about my childhood is just the amount of time I had to be a kid when my peers were in school full time, you know, from early in the morning until late in the afternoon. I had a lot more flexibility, but I was still learning everything that I needed to learn. I was always totally on pace with my peers. I didn't miss out on any education. I just got a lot more time to be able to explore and learn in my own way.
Very good. Anything about Sonlight specifically that you felt maybe?
Definitely the books. I'm a very bookish person now. I learned to love literature from a very young age, and I still read all the time, and that's where most of my continued learning comes from. It's just books. So I think Sonlight specifically is, you know, so classical and focused around literature, and that probably is one of my favorite things about the way I did school. I loved it.
Absolutely. So for this question is for both of you, really, and we'll start with Marci. What's the most common misconception you encounter about homeschooling?
I was talking to some of the other advisors about this because I actually kind of just realized that people had this misconception recently when I was talking to somebody about my kids. They often assume that my kids are really sheltered. They kind of figure that I homeschooled in order to shelter them from things. And, you know, that is true to some degree. I don't look at it as sheltering. I look at it as introducing them to things on my timetable. But Sonlight didn't shelter them from the realities of the world. It just gave me a springboard to talk to them about it. And so, you know, kind of when I hear like, oh, you know, your kids probably had this huge adjustment to going out into the world, I go, actually, no. They didn't. They know how to interact with other viewpoints really, really well. And they know how to encounter people of all different cultures and religions and walks of life because they learned about those people in the books they read. So, you know, I guess, yeah, that's the most misconception. Socialization, we already talked about. That would be like the second one. And the third one would be like people think it was easy because I was the teacher, and so, you know, I took it easy on them, and that they didn't get a great education. So I think that's, you know, their success in college kind of supports the fact that that really wasn't true. So I don't know. Are you going to ask Meredith? Meredith, what are the misconceptions?
Yeah, I think similar. I think when I'm dealing with other peers who find out that I'm homeschooled, I think probably that being sheltered is one of the first reactions, that they assume I had a narrow education, that I, you know, was only taught things from a very narrow worldview. So that's, I think, a first reaction is, oh, you must be very sheltered. And I actually think I have from my experiences in my college classes, it's clear to me that I think I have a more developed understanding of different worldviews than most of my classmates, because it's something that I have personally had to, encounter and process, and, encountering things in books and in my learning that I got to deal with in a safe environment, chatting about it with mom, figuring out, learning to see the world in different ways. So I don't feel like my education was narrow at all, but I think probably they think I'm very sheltered. Generally, the socialization thing is a big one. Might think I'm under-socialized, which becomes pretty clear early on that, I'm friendly and talkative and not under-socialized. And then I think there is some attitude shift now where the attitude toward homeschooling is not maybe as negative as I thought it might be. I thought I would have more of an uphill battle to convince my peers that I was normal or prepared. And it really wasn't. I think most of the people I've encountered have a fairly positive view of homeschoolers, where they're like, oh, you must be really sharp. And I'm like, I don't know about that. But their view of it is not necessarily that I'm underprepared. They have a view that I am well prepared educationally. And, once the more homeschoolers they get to know, the more they see that most of us are really well socialized and really conversational and interesting people. So yeah, that's a lot. That wasn't just one thing, but I guess socialization, being sheltered, and then just people think I have gaps in experiences, and I just don't. I don't feel like I missed out on anything.
I like what you said, though, about how you think that the conversation shifts a little bit. So that, what once may have felt maybe that you weren't getting as much as a traditional schooled child, really proves that people are now thinking you're getting more, which is great.
Yeah. I had an instance where I was talking about my upbringing, and I had a friend who said, I don't know if I would ever homeschool my kids. Like, I just don't know how I feel about that. And we were sitting around a table, I think in the lunchroom at school and college, in the dining hall. And I was like, if you were homeschooled at this table, raise your hand. And every single person sitting around them was homeschooled. And I'm like, every single one of your friends was homeschooled. Like, so apparently you like something about us. And it was just like, you didn't even know.
That is so funny. It's perfect.
Uh-oh. The Meredith, oh, there you go. You froze up.
Okay. If any of you have any questions, put them in the comments. Marci, you homeschooled through high school, clearly. Any advice on getting through high school? I think a lot of people get nervous about having to teach all of the, calculus and that kind of stuff. So any advice on getting through some of that?
Well, I'm just going to be honest. I availed myself of all of the resources that I had available to me. So we used the community college. We used co-op. We used online things. We used in conjunction with Sonlight. We still had our Sonlight, but there were things that, I felt like somebody else needed to take care of for me, or we needed to, get another perspective for me as the teacher. So yeah, I just made use of whatever I had available to me. And there's so many great things available to you for high school to come alongside you for your education. So I found that was a really good complement to the Sonlight History, Bible, Literature packages that we were using too. We were able to kind of mix things up a little bit.
Very good. And I did have a question for them, and we took it off, and it was, what books did you read and reread? And they said that they loved Sonlight books so much that they just devoured whatever was in front of them over and over again. So we didn't answer that question because there wasn't a lot of rereading happening. They were just on to the next. So Marci, I have one more question for you, and this was not something we talked about. Tell me a little bit about homeschooling through 2 levels. I think we often get that question, and you clearly did it quite a bit in life. So tell me a little bit how you work that and how it helped, how it
okay. I think how you make it work for your family is kind of an individual thing. I can tell you how it worked for my family, but I think you have to kind of find your own groove with that. But one thing that I realized early on was that I wasn't going to be able to do all the reading for 2 complete levels. So for us, the best way to do it was that if it, like for instance, Charlotte's Web that we were talking about, is in A, right? But when we came to Charlotte's Web again with Caroline, we didn't really reread it. We just talked about it. We talked about the questions. She remembered the book. There were some that we did read from both levels. Sometimes we alternated. As Meredith got older, sometimes she just took on some of those read alouds on her own because she was a voracious reader and she needed more things to read anyway. So sometimes she would just read them. So you kind of just have to find your groove as a family, what works. But you should kind of release yourself from the idea that you have to do every piece of both levels, because I don't think that's really realistic. And I think you're going to set yourself up for frustration. And I think so approaching it with some flexibility for your family and identifying, what you want to give on. For us, the read alouds were the thing I wanted to give on because I felt like I didn't want to give on the history and I didn't want to give on the readers. And a lot of people, I think, find that to be true. That's the thing that's easiest to flex on.
Very good. So we got another question. Jessica is going to be a first-time homeschooling mom. She's pulling her children out of a very small Christian school, and she said that at this point her daughter doesn't have a love for reading. So maybe a little bit of advice on how to develop that love for reading and oh wait. Okay, that's a little bit more technical. Jessica will answer that question in a minute, but tell me a little bit about how you think you developed a love for reading with Sonlight.
This might be a little more of a mom question, but I think I have a little insight on this. What I didn't mention is when I was in Romania, I was actually homeschooling 4 children while I was there, using a different curriculum that I did not like as much as Sonlight. But I was talking with another missionary mom over there who was so frustrated because her son just hated to read, and trying to get him to read his school books was like pulling teeth. And I was asking, he was like 13, 14. She just couldn't get him to do anything. He hated it. He said he never wanted to go to college, never wanted to he didn't even know if he wanted to graduate through high school. He just hated it. And I was talking with her and I was like, well, what are you having him read? And it's, textbooks. And I was like, I probably wouldn't want to read them either. And I was like, what does he like? And she said, he's very outdoorsy. He likes things like that. And I was like, I bet if you put Hatchet in front of him and let him read that it'll change that. Like there's a couple books even in the Sonlight curriculum that are adventure stories, survival stories, have that kind of outdoorsy, hands-on type of component to them. And I think it's amazing when you're reading books that are actually really fascinating for you and really interesting and that really draw you in. Sometimes, I'm not a parent, but I think just with the kids I was homeschooling, it was surprising to me how someone who hated reading, when given materials that were really engaging, started to just kind of devour the books. So that may or may not be true for your daughter, Jessica, but I've seen it happen a couple times with my limited experience in teaching on the homeschool side. So I'm sure you have more insight on this, Mom. But
actually, that was good, Mer. That's what I would say. I think that's one of the, we had a reluctant reader. It wasn't Meredith, but just being patient and introducing things that are interesting and engaging and giving them the opportunity to explore. Eventually, most kids will realize that it's fun, but sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get them going. So first grade, a lot of the books that are out there for first grader to read independently aren't necessarily adventure stories, but eventually they'll grow into that. So sometimes you just have to, in my opinion, wait until that clicks. The interesting things come and it matches up with their skill level and it clicks.
The funny thing is, didn't you tell me that your other daughter was the one who reread the books?
Yeah.
And she's a reluctant reader. So see?
Yeah.
Jessica.
I think she switched pretty quickly from a reluctant reader to an avid reader once she hit a certain age. It just
I agree. There's all kinds of stages in life where things just click. And when you get to watch that in your children, if it's anything, but reading is definitely one of those special little presents you get to give to yourself when you teach them to read. Well, that's all the questions we have. I'm so grateful for Marci and Meredith for joining me today. I hope every one of you, and Marci, you too, had a great Mother's Day. Meredith, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and making some time so people can really see what it's like to sort of where you are in life. I think we all look at our children and wonder, will they be okay? Are we doing the right thing? And it's always nice to see a positive example. So thank you for taking the time, and thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you soon with another live. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.